Hey there, welcome back to Just the Sip with Norma Normington, and I have a special guest today, Rene Calderon. Calderon, thank you, my friend. And this is Just the Sip, Tongasmic Wine Exploration and Adventure. Today, we have such an incredible episode because Renee is going to take us on a tour of Dashe Cellars in Alameda, California. And he's going to teach you what happens when they get the grapes until they put it in the bottle, and then that goes to your mouth. So stick with us, and we'll be right back. Hey everybody, we're back. This is Norma, and I've got Renee with me. Renee's the winemaker here at Dashe Cellars in Alameda. And Renee, I think your story is so fascinating. I was reading up on an article that Stephanie Sawyer did on you, and also your bio that's listed on Dashe Cellars if you want to learn some more about Renee. But Renee moved from Mexico City, uprooted.
Yes.
From Mexico City in 1996.
1996, that's right.
And landed himself directly into Napa, wine country.
Out of all the things, yes.
Out of all the things. And you were in the middle of studying and stuff. How old were you about?
I was literally just out of high school.
Out of high school.
Out of high school. Actually, my minor there was philosophy.
In high school?
Yes.
All right. And so one day you're like, I'm moving to Napa.
Yes.
I'm going to go study wine. So what brought this on? I mean, did you enjoy wines before then? I mean, Mexico's not really known for wine, right?
No, and it wasn't like, like most immigrant, stories. It's never that drive for like one thing. It kind of like wine came after the fact.
Okay.
At least for me in that way. Napa was the same thing with every immigrant, and that's where some of my family was at.
Okay.
So it was very easy for me when I decided to uproot and come to the United States, to go and visit with my uncle. He happens to be in Napa. And kind of like, he welcomed me in his house, and I lived with them for, about a couple months before I got my own place.
Okay. So just kind of out seeing the world, I'll stop in, see what's in Napa, go visit my uncle.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the wine is pulling you there. Not yet.
Not yet. But that's the beautiful thing about Napa and the differentiating once you get into it. Like, with most people, when they go visit, there is an energy to it. There is a weight to it.
Yeah.
That you cannot just go into a place with so much to offer. What I mean so much is just like the obvious of it. That you go into the town, it used to be 1996. It used to be like, they say that everybody goes to Napa, but this is Napa town.
Yeah.
Everybody just goes into Jamville and all that. But once you get in it, once you get into the vineyards, you start seeing all this beauty everywhere. It really, really grabs you.
Yeah.
And I think like anything that is beautiful, you want to be a part of it.
Right.
That's the first instinct.
Yeah. So do you remember at what point you were like, this is something special. This is something I think at one point you were contemplating going back to Mexico City.
Yes.
And said, no, this is really where my heart is taking me.
Yeah, I know. Well, once I started working in the wineries, my first job was in a winery doing just bottling. And then the bottling there were so many jobs I started bottling, and then they showed me how to drive the forklift. And then the next, I remember it was in 1997, the very first vintage there. Because of the internship, they didn't used to hire a lot of people from without. So the cellar used to grab all the employees and ask whoever wanted to work in the cellar.
Oh, cool.
So in 1997, I was like, I kind of like that. I like the bottling. I like the construct of it. And then the first time that I was approached to the harvest, 1997, I thought it was going to be more exciting than that. In that, just sanitizing tanks for like 3 months. One tank after the other. That's literally the first job. And everybody will tell you in the industry, that's how they get you.
Oh, man.
3 months of sanitizing tanks. But it didn't bother me.
Yeah.
That's the thing about it, It didn't bother me. I philosophy minor. I'm very used to being my own thoughts. So give me that freedom. You know what I mean? That kind of like I'm there doing a job that is, adding to the whole doing. And then you're like, what am I doing it to? Why am I doing it for?
Why? Yeah.
You know what I mean? And starts that curiosity then drives something else. That curiosity that would drive me to move on to another. I worked in a very, very big winery. I would say about 750,000 cases in the beginning.
Wow.
And I went from that winery size to 50,000, which is very small,
right.
Very intimate. You know what I mean? You talk to the winemakers. They give you your labor. You get to ask those questions. why are you doing this?
Right.
They give to you 10 minutes, they give you half an hour, depending on the time, and they will kind of like elaborate onto it.
Now, let me ask you a personal question.
Uh-huh.
Through this journey up until about that point, and you went to Stag's Leap, right?
Yes.
Up until that point, how was your English and I think that's brave. You really didn't, I assume you didn't speak a ton of English,
No,
right?
no.
But you were still getting it. I mean, some of this stuff, especially manual labor or, like you're doing the same thing every day. Maybe you don't need a ton of instruction, but you're learning this stuff without even knowing a whole lot of English. But you're teaching, you're going to ESL classes as well.
As well, yeah, I think
That's great.
The thing when it goes down to about like, everybody, Napa is pretty much like 50-50.
Okay.
Some people literally, they don't need to speak Spanish. They don't need to speak English at all.
Okay.
They can live their life literally like completely Spanish speaking. The foundations are there. The business are there.
Wow.
There's not even a need. And the people that work around us, you know what I mean? Like everybody that I work with was at least 60% Spanish speaking.
Wow.
So, you know what I mean?
Okay. So you could get by.
You can get by.
Yeah.
The thing when it goes down to about it, working and moving on, even going to Stag's Leap, at that point, I would have been, it was being 2000, around 2000, the year 2000.
Okay.
So I am here 4 years into it. I like, because of my, I went to school in Mexico and my academics, I'm not going to brag about it. There's a lot of people much smarter than me, but academics have never been an issue to me. I like reading, I like things. So music, have a lot of interest in heavy metal music.
There's nothing wrong with that.
So the fans are normally Mexican. So I spoke to a lot of Americans about my music taste.
Oh, good.
So that helped me a lot into just fluently, slowly, surely learn the language.
Getting comfortable with some of the different words, verbiage, whatever.
I think culturally that was the thing that I kind of like was the first thing that grabbed me into the United States living.
Yeah.
And I kind of gravitated towards that to use kind of like a learning base for my language skills. So when I went to Stag's Leap, it was actually a little bit better. You kind of like, even nobody spoke Spanish.
Oh.
So
forced you.
It forced me a little bit more, and you kind of like learn how to get through things. One of the beautiful things about Stag's Leap that I still thank them, like I will always thank them. They had a program where you can take classes, and if you get in junior college, they got a program at that point where you go to classes. They will facilitate the time, and if you get over a B, they will pay for it.
Great, that's fantastic. Yeah, of course.
Who doesn't like free?
Right. How can you pass that up?
Yes. So once again, that was once again talking about opportunities and kind of like developing that. I took, I believe, my first English as second language class, like literally very basic. I think they call it ESL 55 or something.
ESL.
Like, this is like 50. Literally like bare bones. It was like 2000. I think it was 2001. I was able to start with that was junior college in Napa. And I was then by 2004, then moving to the general population to start taking classes. Mathematics, biology.
4 years of English, and then you're in university, college, basically.
Yeah, I actually then through all of that, I needed to get my undergrad, all my studies transfer from Mexico. Once again, philosophy majors.
Sure.
They don't know nothing about chemistry, biology,
all the sciences. Yeah.
Hard sciences. That had to do a lot to catch up with that. So took me a little bit of time to gather all that before I transferred into Davis.
That's great.
Graduated Davis 2010.
Awesome.
The whole thing about going back about the love of wine and what I decided to do this is it's a funny thing because I'm about I always wanted to go back to school, but I didn't know what to go back to. And then when I started working with Stag's Leap and I see the intricate value of knowing, you know what I mean? The actual, kind of you can tell now that you're talking to winemakers, they talk about chemistry.
Right.
You know what I mean? They think about the things they're doing, the selection,
it's very intentional.
Yes, very, very intentional. It's just not happening. But how you can be a part of that selection, how did that really just grabbed me.
Yeah.
I really want to be in the winemaking team.
Wow.
So I was like, well, the only way I can do it is through school.
So at that point, you knew you wanted to be a winemaker. Now, I like to say, we talked about this before we got on camera. Anyone can make wine. My mom, and I'm going to break the camera at some point and put in my mom's video of her talking about her winemaking experience, which is precious. I know quite a few people that make wine at home, and it may not be, we talked about in episode two. It doesn't have to be with grapes. Berries work as well, so you can make wines from different organic materials. But your quote is so precious, right? Anyone can make wine.
Oh, but it takes a little bit of extra work to make a good one.
But it makes, and that is where all the training and education that you really need to study and work hard on.
Yes, and I think that's the difference when it goes down to about like just fermenting something versus understanding the mechanics of fermentation, right? And then it's like not even understanding the mechanics of fermentation, but selecting the material to ferment,
right?
Selecting the way that you're going to ferment it, select the chamber you're going to do the fermentation at, selecting the temperature. It starts all the choices is a little bit shorter. It starts stacking up.
That's right.
And I think the stacking is where when a lot comes into it, they can do the stacking yourself. I think for me, the winemaking approaching like that is everything I do should show. If it doesn't show, I don't do it the next year.
But it's a tool, right? And you're learning as you go. And what he's talking about in the fermentation, it's like mom has her gallon jug, her glass gallon jug. That's where the fermentation is taking place. But as a real winemaker or like a professional winemaker, you have so many more tools in your toolbox just in fermentation alone. And fermentation is just one step. And we're going to get into fermentation here shortly, but not into this episode, but we're going to talk about it as we do the tour. So I love that. Wine shouldn't be intimidating, but if you really want to refine the taste of the wine, you've got to work hard at it.
Yes.
And you put that time and effort in.
And maybe we're talking about kind of like when we go through the winery, I show you some of the different containers and see how they change. You know what I mean? We can focus on one and how that changes the wine per se.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? But you can see that there's different, even within the winery, there's a different containers for each one of the processes.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, going back to the whole idea of like when I found the winemaking, they can be a part of that. I think it was more like they wanted to be a part of the choosing. You know what I mean? Choosing is very important to that. I wanted to make part of that when something comes out, that it reflects a little bit of some of my choices onto it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So you're responsible. Like, you're directly influencing that wine.
Yeah. If I wanted
what a power.
It's not
it's
a responsibility.
I like to say making wine, and I don't know what is science and art. And you talked about the hard sciences, and then you've got the art part of it, which is really where you get creative. And like you said, some of that blending really starts to get into that as well. So that's fantastic. So you finished Davis, and
Davis, when it goes down to it, Davis is a whole other monster.
Yeah.
I love it. I had a really good time. Once again, we're talking about, and I think I see my life kind of like the way that I became part of the United States, because I think it's an immigrant kind of storytelling. Is like, there's like where you come here and you're like, oh, I like this because it's a beautiful place to be at. You live in Napa, you hang out, you get to do all these things. And then there's another part of you where it's like, you're talking about going back home, or you miss home.
Sure, of course.
You miss the food, you meet your friends, you meet the things that, you know what I mean, you are it.
Yeah.
You call it home. But there's a point, there's home is only where your heart is at, because that's where you grew up. I love here, talking about later, we talk about a little bit later about how I ended up here in Oakland.
Right.
But I've been in Oakland longer now than I ever been in Mexico.
Right.
Or in Napa. Like, I live here longer, so this has become home to me. Davis was the little ecosystem in which I made that decision. Where I was like, I belong here. There's something for me. I am a part of this.
Yes.
You know what I mean? My peers, we still talk to each other very often now, but they're like, I'm a part of this. I actually a part of the industry. I'm a part of this country. I'm a part of this situation.
Belonging.
I am not just here.
Yeah.
I'm making my own choices to be here.
Yeah, right.
That was very nice. That was definitely in that point when I was like, how do I grow from that?
Right.
What kind of person, what kind of winemaker, what kind of, you know what I mean, a professional I want to become. And that is the part of when it goes on to about getting off of Davis. It's like, I want to live where I want to live. I want to make wines that are really good, and I want to make them as long as possible.
Yeah. So after Davis, then you're looking for an internship possibility then? As what? Then an assistant winemaker? Is that the next step? Or
for me, one of the things
you were still working while you were at Davis for a while, right?
For a while. I stopped working probably for 2 years, it was very the schooling was very intense.
I bet.
So even before,
I mean, if you don't know, UC Davis is one of the top wine schools. I don't even know what to call it.
UC Davis graduate would say is
yeah. Thank you. Capital TAP. If you want to learn how to make wine, go to University of California, Davis.
Yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to interject.
Yeah, no. And I think for me, it was like it's just like talking about the English as a second language at this point. English is a language, but nevertheless, writing a paper for most people takes so many hours. For another like me, it took a little bit longer. The work got so heavy, even used through my junior college classes, that I had to take time off work. So I didn't work for about 4 years.
Wow, okay.
Just kind of like doing kind of like a job here, but not full time. I did a little bit of like kind of like a pouring wine. I did a little bit of like selling wine, and and I actually every time that I wanted like to put some time in the cellar in stack sleep, they would get me back.
Oh, that's great.
And get 2 hours here and there. I'm telling you, I love that.
Sounds like a family type of
stack sleep. There was
company.
they did a lot for me.
Yeah,
they did a lot for me. But no, getting off of school for me, one of the things that was important. I worked in the cellar my entire career, and I already know what the cellar looked like. I can see through schooling what they were talking about the process. I seen the process, I seen it, and I touched it before, so I had a connection to it. The laboratory is a whole nother thing. So when
you say the cellar, that's what we're going to see on our tour.
Yes,
that's just the big term that you use for the process here. And we're going to get to that.
Yeah,
so it's not like somebody's basement he's talking about. This is the cellar. And if you hear background noise, because this is a working environment we're in. So bear with it.
Yeah. So no, after school, one of the things that I thought it was weak in my education was the laboratory. So I was trying to find a laboratory.
The science part of it.
The science part, the practical, the actual touching, because one of the things when somebody tells you about a titration, you do titrations in school, you do all this kind of separation, you do all this microbial thing, you do all these things in practice, but it's like, how do that translate into the cellar? How do you translate into the winery itself?
How does it all come together?
How it all comes together. So when I got out of Davis, I got a job with Wente.
Wente,
yes. I went
Livermore.
Livermore.
Or I like to say liverless.
Livermore.
Sorry.
I love Livermore.
I do too. I just feel like half of my liver's there when I leave.
That's a really good one. I remember that.
But I love Wente. I love Livermore.
It's a really good. It was different than Napa when it goes down to about it. I think when it goes down to it has this kind of like a little bit of a seated thing, but not a little bit of an old fashioned, but not.
Right.
It's a really good marriage about kind of like for me and my experience about working with a different kind of culture that Napa is.
Right.
Napa is very much into this like we are all Davis.
It's true.
Livermore was a little bit more comfortable.
I would say a little laid back.
Yes.
Livermore, for people that don't know, is a little city outside of the Bay Area, outside of Oakland. I would
about
think.
40 minutes.
Yep. Just go over this hill and it's like, woo, hey, there's countryside and it's all grapes and it's gorgeous because it's usually warm.
Yes.
I like warm. But it's full of, I think, wonderful wineries out there. But the attitude is, let's just say, not so pretentious.
No.
Not to say that all of Napa is. But there is kind of this air about like we are professional and you know what I'm talking about. It's just different.
The way that I call it is a locals business.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because Napa, when it goes down to it, I think a lot of people, it is like a lot of people's for Napa. There is a lot of people like me that is not for Napa. They just kind of insert themselves into it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? For what I find Livermore is more of a locals. There's like the family has owned the vineyard.
Right.
The family has owned this. Somebody came with the dream to like actually have a vineyard. Then it's like, well, we have a vineyard now. We can make wine. So it's just, everything is small and everybody's very excited about doing so.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I think when it goes down to about a professionist, it was more about enthusiasts. They wanted to make something bigger.
Yes.
And there's a bunch of enthusiasm in Livermore, and that drives a lot of excitement to it. It's happy because everybody's happy to be there.
It's I think it's laid back and everyone has this kind of joyous attitude about it. And it doesn't matter what winery you go to. It's kind of all the same there. It's wonderful. Not to say that there aren't other places. And if you get the chance to go to Napa, go.
Yes.
Please.
Well, winemaking is one of those things when it goes down to about it, and then you start differentiating within one zone, and you kind of like get yourself surrounded by another kind of like expectations of why you are there.
Right.
And filling those expectations, I think that's what you grow as a person because you have to see things differently. Livermore helped me a lot when it goes down to about like me working in the lab. I like reading a lot. So there was a lot of time for me to like review papers.
So you kind of, let's say, you honed in your lab skills.
Yes. And I
So
use that.
that's good.
Every time that we do something, I will go through the literature. You can just, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
because
yeah.
then they will ask you, it's like, we're looking into do this and this and this. And it's like, well, let me revise the literature.
Yeah.
And fresh out of school, there's so much to go through it.
Yeah.
I'm going to learn how to do like, simple titration and simple AO for sulfurs. Sulfurs, like, you know what I mean? Like kind of like you can run in your own house. Yeah, you have the equipment. I'll show you my tiny, tiny lab. So it was very nice to have a very industrial lab and be a part of that.
Yes.
And learning from that, it really got me to do what I call winemaking by the numbers. When you cannot see a tank, but if you see all the data, what does it tell you?
That makes sense.
Yes.
Got it. And then all of a sudden, it's like you've got the cellar, you've got the lab, your confidence is way up.
Yes, and I think that's what happened. That's what it goes on to about like that has the becoming into winemaking. Winemaking is an old kind of like a like old fashioned business where you go through enologists, which I totally skipped.
Analysis.
you go to laboratory rat, like lab rat, it's like cellar rat, lab rat. You never leave that. And you go into enology, which is part of the winemaking team, assistant winemaker. You know what I mean? That is technically the pentacles there.
Yeah, you can pretty much, that's the way out.
And I think you even just by saying where you're at, people would understand. Yep. I just got this job, and they understand where you're coming from, and you acknowledge of what your comfort and to what conversations to have.
It's kind of like your resume.
Yes.
They know exactly pretty much what your skill sets are at that point.
I think you probably will see some of my posts at some point where when I got my business card as a winemaker, photo posts, because everybody knows what it means, the work to go behind to get to that.
Yeah.
So
it's a huge accomplishment. Can I make the analogy? Yes. Because I think more people can relate to this. I mean, they think, winemaker, mom in the bathtub but no, you're like an executive chef. Is that a decent analogy? Because you're in charge of so many more things than just making the wine. It's every aspect of it.
Well, I think that's the thing when it goes down to about the levels in winemaking for me. I like production. I like making things with my own hands.
Right.
So I try to like stay very much right now with Dashe, because we're talking about 750,000 cases. Going to Stack Sleep that was making 50,000.
Right.
Wente was going at 1.5.
Right.
It's like huge.
There.
But there is like, then now when I came to Dashe, it's like 10,000, 13,000 cases.
Wow.
And everything can be done by hand. So that's what I do. I pretty much like make 10,000 cases. I call it. I made 10,000 cases for the Dashes. So everything when it goes on to from grape to bottle, I touch.
Perfect. But you have a team that you're in charge of.
No. It's only through harvest. We actually hire only people the second half of the year. Most of the year I'm by myself.
But so at big wineries,
yes,
it's like an executive chef.
Yes. And I think yes.
You are definitely involved in every little piece of boutique. I mean, This is considered a boutique winery. But when you have that larger capacity, then you're delegating and managing a lot.
Yes, and I think that's what happens when it goes down to about like the strategy and to like how to approach the problem in winemaking, because that's the way I see winemaking. It's like who is doing what. Right. You know what I mean? When it goes down to for a bigger winery, what you have the winemaker, you will have the assistant winemaker, you will have the enologist. This one tells this one what to do, and this one tells this one what to do.
Right.
Who ends up doing it? That's when it goes down to about the kind of responsibilities and understandings. It's like this will say we're gonna have to bottle this like 10,000 cases by next month, and this one will say, well, we need all the parts to be bought. This one doesn't buy parts, but this one will be like, okay, we need you to start getting that wine ready. I'm going to get the parts.
In anticipation.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So everything kind of gets distributed when it goes on to about like your level of like where you're at and where you're purchasing. Your purchasing power, you're actually doing a lot of decisions in the lab and laboratory work. That's the enologist. Has to run all the chemistry for all those wines that are going to come up to be bottled.
Wow.
The assistant winemaker will have to make sure that all those wines get into tanks and they get actually like, taste, smell, and make sure that those wines are separate until the whole group can taste them together and come out with a blend for it.
Nice. It's like poetry.
Yes. And then this for us, when it goes down to about Mike, Ann and I.
So those are the owners,
Yes.
Mike and Ann Dash.
And they're really good winemakers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's the beauty about it. When it goes on to about the dissociation of the work, we go like, we got a bottling date. Mike gets all of the parts together. Yes, we are still manufacturing all of the parts together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'll put all the wines out. We start getting to do the chemistry. I have my own little laboratory to do some chemistry. We send some stuff out. When it goes on to about sitting down and blending, and has such a delicate palate. When it goes on to about understanding where the project will have to go, we all sit together. We all say our piece. I'll start with this. This is what I found in the cellar. This is the things that I think will be interesting to start with.
Cool.
Mine would be like, well, I always find this one to work really well with this. Let's put those together.
Wow.
And we'll be in the part where it's like, I like this, but it's missing this.
Yeah.
Or I like this a lot, but it will be nice if we can actually then put it here.
And you're really talking about blends.
Yes, in this point.
Now, a lot of people don't know, because if we have, like, say we're selling a Zinfandel, that has to be minimum 75% Zin grapes. Is
That is
that?
California appellation. It's the appellation. So you're California.
Right.
So they always, that's another one when it goes on to about it, very difficult to the industry. California, when it goes on to, you have see a label that says California, it's at least 75% of what they say there.
Right. Yes. Okay.
Right. And then you go into county. You mention a county on it. You
Yeah.
have to be at least 85%.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
To what that county is at.
Yeah.
Talking about just Sonoma, Sonoma. Not even Coast, because Coast is still even smaller.
Wow.
Sonoma, and then you say California, Sonoma Coast.
Right.
Now you're in the 90%. And then you say California, Sonoma Coast, vineyard. Then it has to be, all of it has to be 95% from that vineyard.
Wow.
And then you say vineyard, and then you start saying the vineyard designation. You know what I mean? You can only blend stuff within that vineyard, and just has to be very high in volume wise. I know.
Wow. See, I'm learning too. That's amazing. So, okay. So what do you fall under? California. You don't fall under Sonoma. We're
No, we do
Alameda County.
No, we ourselves when it goes on to
Because the grapes come from Sonoma.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're using that standard
That is the standard.
because that's where the grapes come from.
Yes. Where the grapes are grown, not where the grapes are made at. Where the wine is made at. No, the grapes is what defines the labeling. Yeah, we ourselves, when it goes down to it, we do a whole bunch of, like, most, I would say out of our 19, 20 SKUs, I would say 16 of them are single vineyards.
Wow.
Single vineyard designations. And actually we have
That's amazing. Yeah.
It's not even single vineyard. This is single block.
It's crazy. Crazy. This is beautiful. Wow. Well, should we take a walk around and show us? Okay. Go ahead.
When we do this, then let's empty this. I'll give you, would you like reds or whites?
I'll drink whatever you pour me.
Let's start with the whites, because the whites are a really good story.
Okay.
I like to tell it.
All right. Hey guys, welcome back. And I'm with Renee, and he's just opened this wonderful bottle of Chenin Blanc 2023 Concrete Cuvée from Clarksburg. Sorry. So tell us a little bit about this wine. So,
well, you notice this wine is cold.
Yes.
So when it goes down to about it, it's not meant to be completely aired out. It's cold because you want it to appreciate it as it is right now.
So if you are swirling it too much, you're going to heat it up too much?
Yeah.
Okay.
Technically, that's what it is. So This one is so low alcohol. Then look at very little.
Okay.
This
so
one is
more alcohol, bigger legs.
Bigger legs.
Okay.
Yes.
I always heard that was sugar, but it's alcohol.
Alcohol.
Okay.
Yes. 12.5%.
Okay.
This is very, very little when it goes down to about it. So you got a little bit of that tension on the wall. You can see, you still can see it, but you can see where it's actually more about the cold to the warm. My whites, very careful. They're never with a bubble in it. You know what I mean? You never go to the point where you know what I mean?
You put too much air in it.
Yes.
Right.
So I normally warm it up a little bit with my mouth.
So you keep it in there for just a bit.
Just a second.
Okay.
Kind of like I want to see the texture. The nose.
The nose is beautiful.
There's like this old-fashioned wax. It's almost Riesling, but not.
Not. Yeah, it's a hint of sweetness, but not.
Yes. And that's the thing about with this and to this. You know, this is like very, very dry. And I'm sure you have this. The sweetness is a perception, but it's only a perception of the yeast.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a little bit of that creaminess on the texture for this. you know, and it kind of, the acid is high enough where it kind of like, it just, you salivate.
Yeah.
And now you're eating that as part of the experience. Oh, stunning. I'm like, ooh, I love the cheesiness in this. Is this malolactic or no malolactic? Let me guess. Partial. It's just as important. I think when it goes down to about it, if you want to go, it's important to say, this remind me of baklava. And that's with this one because I love baklava.
I do too. I do too.
You smell on it, and it's like this part of the baklava when you freshly cut.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's memory. It's just fine.
Cool. Time to walk?
Let's walk around. One of the beautiful things about the Shannon, differentiating from obviously all the whites that we do is this one right here. 500-gallon tank. Let's say about 10 inches of pure concrete between this inside. The egg shape in theory, well, what it does for the fermentation is obviously there's a lot of cooling, natural cooling to the fermentation, so the fermentation was very slow.
Okay.
This one, we'll think we get the grapes from Clarksburg. With the grapes, bring it to the winery. Once we bring it to the winery, we put the grapes in the press. This one gets pressed out. The juice goes into a tank, one of those fancy tanks with jacket.
Okay.
The cooling system is getting turned on, hyper cool it to drop a lot of the solids. Leave it for about 2 days there, and then it comes
To the egg.
to the egg. What do we do from there on? Technically, that
Wow.
we do native fermentation.
Okay.
So when it goes on to about the fermentation, it's really for what is in the vineyard and what is the yeast that is here in the winery naturally, and already within the tank itself. So the tank gets filled up to about 95%
Okay.
capacity.
Okay.
The natural cooling in the for the concrete with kind of like a drive the fermentation very slowly. We never go over 75 degrees. And this here people will understand this,
Yeah.
especially what that's for the wine. So what you end up getting is because the CO2 and the fermentation once it starts going, the egg shape allows for the lees. The lees is the sediments
Okay.
that come off fermentation.
Natural sediment.
Natural sediments from the yeast in grape matter.
Okay.
That's settled in the bottom, technically with a little bit of CO2 in the shape, keeps it on in solution, keeps it moving. So one of the things that you get with that, you get a lot of exposure of like the wine itself to all the yeast cells. The yeast, once it dies, it starts breaking down. And then when you start breaking down, you get all these proteins floating around.
Okay.
Proteins that it surely adds to palate texture to it. So out of this, without any fancy aging or any like kind of like additives or anything like that, that proteins they give you a sensation of sweetness and texture,
Okay.
fattiness to the wine without going to malolactic.
Okay. All natural.
All natural.
Fantastic.
Just by selecting this tank to drive the fermentation.
And that's why you're a boutique winery. Because you can.
Yeah.
Because you can. Because you're looking for quality.
Yes. And I think when it goes down to about it, they're just finding the right grapes, finding the right programs, and finding the right tanks, so kind of like fermentation chambers that allows for the things that you're looking into it.
Okay.
For us, what we're looking for a wine that is nice and clear. Shows the grape itself, but when it comes down to about it, because of where we do to it, it shows different. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Kind of like I like malolactic. I like the malolactic in white wines. That's what gives you the butter, the kind of big flavor to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of really enjoy, you were mentioning before about when we have it earlier, there is a little bit of sweetness.
Yeah.
The sweetness actually is no sugar. It's just all this little tiny proteins flowing around, just kind of giving you that sensation.
Wow. Amazing. Now, okay, so when I hear something is not oaked, it's in stainless steel. We're talking about just those big barrels, right? Okay.
About, like, when it comes down to this, is definitely not oak. So
Yep.
concrete is going to be what to say it's like it's not oak.
Yep.
When you're talking about like something like this,
Yep.
you guys need to get one of these at home.
Mom, here's your next purchase, Mom.
There's like this one, just Just get like like 500 gallons. This one is 1,000 gallons. Maybe a little too big for some basements. But the beauty of it, you see the little dimples?
Yeah.
It's actually have a jacket. The jacket that circulates glycol cooling. So we can control the temperature of the fermentation inside. A lot of fermentations even for like the Shannon doesn't go over 75. So all you have to do is bring the wine in, start the fermentation, set this to 75 degrees, and as soon as it goes to 75, it will keep it at 75.
Oh. Yeah.
No winemaking, so hard. White wine is probably one of the easiest wines for me to make. For me, when it goes down to about it sounds like the steps is grapes, press, settle, put into tank, and ferment. Control the fermentation. We have a controller for that. Okay. It sounds really easy, but when it goes down to about the finding, once again, the leaves, the yeast, the contact, the time, we selected 75 because it's a long fermentation, so there's not a lot of heat. We don't lose a lot of the aromatics. We keep it in solution. Selecting those things. That's what I was saying about like when you're making wine. It's easy to make wine, but those choices change the wine. Those little ones. You know what I mean?
Yep.
How long to press? How long to let it hang when you pick? What to ferment it in? What kind of a chamber? Chamber is one of the things that I always use. So containers, tanks, or literally
whatever we're looking at here, right?
You put it into it. Yep. What is it doing for your wine? Right. You know, so it's just things to think about it. A lot of people do wine by carboys. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Carboys it's a really good idea at home. For me, are really dangerous. I make me really very, very nervous. I just would use buckets. They're easier to clean, and they will never break on you.
That's funny.
You know.
So when we're taking it out of here, you're at some point after the fermentation, you're going to take it out of these big tanks.
Yes.
And you're going to put them in the barrels or the bottles? Nope, those are right in the bottle.
It goes straight for in there. Once the fermentation is going from finished there,
yep,
that will go. It stays there as long as possible. Okay. All the
stays in the egg.
Stays in the eggs. All that yeast that starts dying out.
Yep.
The CO2 is gone, so a lot of it was still floating around. You get a lot of the textures breaking down, and then it's slowly but surely the inertia, the momentum of the heat loss we kind of like settle onto the bottom of the tank. So the wine starts clearing out.
Okay.
You give that period of time when that happens, you know that it's not activity there. So then
you're always checking it.
You always.
Like every day. I mean, like every day you're opening that, yes. You're tasting the tank.
You look at the temperature, there's a temperature drop, that means that there's less fermentation going. We actually check with a meter to see what the sugar is at. So there's all these kind of markers that we follow through. Once the fermentation is done, CO2 starts escaping. That kind of like starts more settling. You look at the wine, it's like, okay, this is as clean as it's going to get onto itself. Let it stay there. Let's have all the yeast break down as much as possible. There's a point where we have to rack what is called racking. Rack the clean wine off the top, leave all the sediments behind, bring it into one of these tanks.
Gotcha.
Let it settle again so you can get eventually to this. Settle, goes to a different tank.
How many tanks do you put it in?
That one probably gets to about 3 to 4 rackings.
Wow.
Within, you know what I mean? To settle.
Just keep it settling. Keep it settling.
Keep it settling just naturally. The tanks stay cool. Trying to do, we're talking about a little bit of that rates.
Right.
Like little things that you have it. Mm-hmm. The way that you prevent that to happen is by having the wine in cold. Like you were doing in the refrigerator.
Yep.
You keep the wine cold so it happens here and it doesn't happen in the bottle.
Yeah.
So we keep the tanks cold. We keep going into that. So that will be, so we get what? We press the wine, the grapes in mid-September.
Okay.
The fermentation does not end. That one ended until Thanksgiving.
Wow.
That's a really long
it stays in the egg until Thanksgiving.
It stays in the end, fermenting. It did not get racked the first time until December.
Wow.
That's when the very first time
the first rack
off.
Wow.
Just kind of like racked up and then back into the egg. In that first one. Back into the egg. Just to like get that kind of like a concrete into it. And then once we're getting ready for bottling, come in here, settle, come in here, settle. It will be for about a month in stainless steel and then goes to the bottling.
Wow.
We bring a truck to do the bottling for us. So it's literally a semi. Parts in the back. and then they have all the equipment there.
Like a little assembly line, and you just set it up and pour it right from the tank.
You get enough people to do so. You go through your filters. You go through all of your quality control assurance.
Make sure that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
a lot more to it. We're keeping this simple as we can.
Very, very simple. Like I was saying, the easiest. Get your grapes, press them, put them in the tank, let them settle, rack the clean wine, the juice out, let it ferment, and then just settle until it goes to the bottom.
Wow. There you go.
Super
That's
easy.
making wine, Mom. Mom, you ready?
I can't believe they paid me for that.
Hey there, I'm back with Renee, and we're at Dashe Cellars, and Renee has been so generous with this time today. So Renee is open. This is a single vineyard series. How do you say that? Louveau Vineyard? Louveau. Dry Creek Valley, Block 2, 2001, Zimbabwe. So we're talking about a tiny little patch of vines.
Oh, yes. You can actually count them. You can actually you can actually count the vines where these come from.
And everything in here is from that.
Yes.
100%.
100% block.
No mixing, no blending, no nothing.
Mixing.
That's it.
Well, I'm not going to lie to you. Maybe a touch.
Okay.
A petit syrah.
Okay.
Like literally a touch, just to the kind of like, one of the jokes there, and I don't know if they stole a joke. One of the jokes about the Dry Creek and their Zinfandel is like, you know why they're so good? Because they got so much petit blend into it. I was like, like planted within the vineyard.
Yeah.
There is petit syrah all over the place. So there's one, it's still out there. Some growers would be like, what are you talking about? There's no petit.
Just stick with the Zin.
But there's just because it's a little bit of petit. Everywhere.
But that's all about the experience of blending.
Yes.
And just adding a touch. And when you said, Anne said, there's just something missing.
Yes.
Right? Like,
just
wow.
A little, yes. When it goes down to, for us, this one is, I think the petit syrah in this is like 1%. 1%, we're talking about a production of 300 gallons. Literally just a splash.
So the tasting room is open, and I think it's only fair for you guys. We're going to kind of wrap this up a little bit, but I want you to know that you're really not going to find this on, and it's such small batch, you're not going to find it many places.
Because like when it goes on about it, we're talking about California.
Right.
This is like the tiniest we make, and we make it for the wine club. You know what I mean? We do it for a wine club, but this is definitely, I wanted to show you this because this is examples what we can do with some grapes.
Yes.
Zinfandel is what we do. But when it goes on to for us to find it, this multi-boutique winery, boutique little wine shops, we're definitely in a lot of restaurants in the East Coast and obviously here,
right.
West Coast. But it's like, normally when it goes on to it, if you want Dashe, the website is the best place to start.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
You're not going to get like a block 2. You can get the Chenin.
Yes, you can get the Chenin.
There's certain wines you have to be a wine member for to get.
Yes.
And there's others that you can just order off the website. Although shipping can be a little bit funky because it's still the state laws. You can ship some places. Yeah.
But nevertheless, you're like now it's actually
it's better.
It's much, much better.
Yep.
And obviously, if you are in California, you're over here in the Bay Area, come and visit us.
Oh yeah.
We're here in Alameda. We have.
Ask for Renee.
Yes. I am always happy, especially Fridays. I'm always happy to chit chat when it goes on about wine. What is not to talk about? You know what I mean? And enjoy.
Yeah.
So
Renee, cheers. Thank you so much for your time. So generous with your time. I really appreciate it. You've taught me. You've taught everyone who's watching so much. This is Norma Normanton signing off from Dashe Cellars in Alameda, California, right by Oakland. Cheers, Renee.
Salute.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So I remember distinctly that you got a wild hair, surprisingly, and you wanted to make your own wine. Balloon wine.
Balloon wine, they got an empty jug. I know you needed yeast, a lot of sugar.
Yeast, sugar.
And Welch's 100% grapefruit juice, or grape juice. And then you put this really heavy balloon over it. And a couple of days, it starts to get a little bit bigger and bigger.
More sugar.
Yeah.
And
a couple cups, I think. Oh. So when the balloon kind of lost its fullness and kind of shrunk back down, the wine was ready. So then all I can remember is that everybody got kind of happy.
Well, how did it taste?
And it was sweet.
It
wine.
was sweet, like sweeter than that sweet wine.
Heading forward to when I just kind of married a couple years and had all the kids. And
Wait, what year was it before, you think?
Probably in the 50s. Good memory. So I thought, let's try this balloon wine.
Because even though it was a little sweet, very sweet.
Yeah, but I didn't remember that sweetness. I just remember it was sweet and it went down the
Palatable.
palate.
You could
Yeah.
drink it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't cough syrup.
Well, I didn't get too much. But I was too busy having kids and trying to keep the household going. So my winemaking time was
Limited.
at a standstill.
Right. So you hadn't made any wine before that, and then one day you're like, I'm going to make wine.
I'm going to give it a try, yeah.
Because it's cheap
It was,
and I'm busy. And all you need to do is blow up a balloon.
and the kids were entertained by watching the balloon go.
Bet we were. Wait, so how did this batch come out?
It was okay.
Did you throw extra
we
sugar?
drank it.
So did you use the same recipe? Welch's grape.
Yep, oh yeah.
Where'd you get the yeast? Did you know what kind of yeast to put in there?
Little block of yeast. Oh no, they had little blocks of yeast before.
At the
And they
grocery
had some-
store?
Yeah. So
So you had two good previous experiences.
Yeah.
Although it came out pretty sweet.
sweet, but
You could still
it's
drink
okay.
it.
I could drink it. Yes, price was right.
So you guys decided to do this during COVID, right?
It's our COVID batch.
Yeah, okay.
I told them we're going to make the balloon wine and had something to do during
Balloon
COVID.
wine.
Watch this balloon go up.
So just one canister of the grape juice. And are you still putting about 2 cups of sugar? Like you already know
Yeah.
that's sweet, but you're still following this recipe.
Yeah, because it seemed to have worked before.
But yeah, but not great.
So we tried, and we do you remember?
Yes.
We drank it. We drank
You know, of
it,
course you drank it. Yeah, that's not surprising.
and it was sweet, quite sweet. I think.
Did you drink it all?
Well, not
So
nugget.
So would you recommend that people make their own wines? And is that the recipe to go by? Or what would you change?
I think I wouldn't put as much sugar in. Yes, I'd probably go down to maybe one cup.
1 cup instead of 2.
Yeah,
2 heaping.
yeah, it was pretty sweet, but it did not stop us.
No, well, why would it?
I know we would want to.
So you drank 5 gallons of pretty crappy sweet wine. It was COVID.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was our entertainment. When people ask, "What did you do during COVID?"
So did you name the wine?
Airborne.
Airborne. Okay. Okay.
Anyhow,
Well, Mom, I appreciate your time and I don't know about advice for making wine, but it just goes to show that you can take juice, you can take fruit, and if it's not sweet enough, add a little bit of sugar, throw that yeast in there, and you'll end up with something alcoholic. Okay. All right. Well, cheers.
cheers.